Lightful is finally available, and with it has come Strand, the newest darkness subclass. For Warlock, Broodweaver is all about using threadlings to do your bidding and help prime targets for your fights, and now with all the fragments available for Strand, we're finally able to see how strong Broodweaver will be in PvP. So in today's video, I'm going to cover the best overall build for Broodweaver by breaking down the aspects, fragments to use, and mods to ensure you have the lowest cooldowns possible. So if you're not sure where to start with Strand and Warlock, then this video has you covered. Now let's get into the video, and if you enjoy, make sure to drop a like as a free way to support the channel. Alright, and for Broodweaver, we are going to just jump right in. We're going to fly through these abilities real quick and to get into our aspects and fragments. Of course, we're going to be using Healing Rift. Highly recommend this for overall survivability. We're going to be using Burst Glide because this is going to be the best and fastest glide you can use on Warlock, so on any subclass. We have our melee ability, which is Arcane Needle. Honestly, this is probably the weakest part of the subclass. It can be good to prime targets or finish targets that are relatively weak. It does about 68 damage. So if you are able to land 3 of these, you will kill some Guardians. But overall, it's nothing to write home about on this one. It definitely is the weakest part of the subclass, as I mentioned. Getting into our grenade, we have a couple of options here. Of course, you have the grapple, you have the shackle grenade, which is also very good, and we have the threadling grenade. And out of the 3, I probably recommend running the threadling grenade for this build because it's going to really do a great job of priming targets, especially when we get into our fragments and we have, threadlings do more damage and all that. This is going to be really helpful. The way this works is a couple of ways, or I guess mainly the main way is you can throw it and it's going to drop threadlings as it kind of flies through the air. So you really want to aim this high. You don't want to throw it like a normal grenade. It does kind of float a little bit more. And so aiming it high, throwing it, and it's going to kind of sprinkle down threadlings as it kind of travels. So that's the way I found the most success when just throwing this as a grenade. Jumping into our aspects, really nitty gritty of what we're trying to get into. We have Weaver's Call, Caster Rift. We weave 3 threadlings into play. Any threadling you have perched. This is nice just for all overall survivability. Again, we're gonna be popping our Rift a lot just as a Warlock and running 100 recovery. And so we're gonna get 3 little threadlings that spawn and are gonna do some damage, or they're gonna perch onto us and kind of be floating around us in a circle. So that way, as we're running around and we start engaging targets, they will start jumping and kind of either creating a distraction or doing some damage. Now, this is where the build gets a little bit more interesting because we have Mind Spell Invocation. Your grapple, shackle grenade, and threadling grenade have enhanced functionality. Your grapple melee spawns 3 threadling eggs, but we don't really care about all this. I could read through all this, but basically for the threadling grenade, which we're going to want to use, hold to consume your threadling grenade and immediately generate 5 perched threadlings. And so this is a great way to, if you're planning to jump into a fight, what I like to do is consume my threadling grenade and then jump into that fight. And as I'm fighting, you're gonna have all these threadlings just start jumping off you and running at the enemy and either doing about 45 damage with the right fragments, or if you're just creating a distraction overall. It is really hard to fight because you're just seeing these things running on the ground towards you, and just creates a nice distraction for the enemy and applies some nice pressure because it's just something they have to try to fight you and either choose to take some damage from your threadlings or disengage and run away. And a lot of times enemies get stuck trying to decide between the two, and they're easy to kill, or your threadlings will get those cleanup kills as you're doing damage. Getting into the fragments now. Jumping into our first fragments, we have Thread of Ascent. Activating your grenade ability reloads your equipped weapon and grants bonus airborne effectiveness and handling for short duration. To me, this is just like a win-win. Really helps with handling, and especially when now we don't have mods like Quick Charge anymore, which is to help with handling. Having something or a fragment that helps with handling is going to be really nice here. And you get a plus 10 mobility, which, as I've talked about in the past, I don't care about, but overall we will take that. Next, and this is going to be the big one, it's Thread of Evolution. Threadlings travel farther and deal additional damage. So this gives us plus 10 intellect, which is nice. Anytime we get additional stats, it's going to be huge. And this in PvP makes sure threadlings do about 5 more damage per threadling. So it's not going to be a game changer, but it does help. Any additional damage will help, and so it does make them a little bit more lethal. Keeping in mind that when we pop our super, which I'll talk about in a second, also those threadlings will also do more damage, which is great. Next, we have Thread of Generation. Dealing damage generates grenade energy, minus 10 discipline. Now this one's an interesting one. I don't love getting minus 10 discipline, but I have found just by using this, you're going to be getting a small amount of grenade energy back just by playing the game. And so I think this is a fair trade-off just because you're going to get so much grenade energy back. As long as you're engaging an enemy, getting into fights, doing damage, which is basically impossible not to do unless you're just hiding and camping somehow and just staring at a wall. this is going to be working for you. So I think the trade-off here is definitely worth it, especially consider that this is a lot of this build is based on consuming our grenade or throwing our threadling grenade. This is going to be huge to just really amp up our grenade regen. And then lastly, we have Thread of Binding, and this is just something to help our super be a little bit more potent, especially when a lot of enemies are together. Super final blows emit a suspending burst from the target, which is really nice. So when we kill someone with our super, they're going to explode, and which if there's anyone near them that for whatever reason we didn't hit, it's going to suspend them. So at least making them kind of freer to kill or unable to fire back at us and kill us out of our super because they are suspended. So overall, this is a great fragment to just complement our super with a free +10 resilience, which is nice. And of course, you have the super Needlestorm. So after embedding themselves in the environment, needles will reweave into a host of threadlings. And so what this is kind of like, this is kind of like a cross between Nova Bomb and Blade Barrage. I kind of consider it more similar to Blade Barrage, except for the fact that like you can't kill yourself if you just shoot it at your feet. That being said, it does have to impact directly on the enemy. So when it flies, the needles fly at them, they do have to impact directly to get secure a kill. Usually the explosions that create the threadlings themselves will not be enough to kill. They will create the threadlings, which can then kill, which is why having stronger threadlings is important through Thread of Evolution. But overall, this one is very similar to Blade Barrage, and you want to kind of use it in that way. You can spread it between two enemies, so you can kind of like aim at one, and as it fires, drag it your reticle across your screen and hit multiple enemies. But you got to be careful with that as well, just because sometimes then they all miss because the tracking just gets all off. And the way these come out is also something to be aware of, because they come out wide and then go in. And so when someone is really close to you, it can just completely whiff because they go out wide and around the opponent and then hits the enemy. So something to be aware of with this super, but overall it's very powerful, travels very quickly, and the tracking is quite good. So I'm pretty happy with this super, and I think it's something definitely worth using in PvP. Getting into our mods, and now we have definitely a much cooler way to kind of look at all our mods, thanks to the update Bungie has done to our overall mod system, not to mention See My Amazing Destiny fashion. But let's just jump into it. So basically the main thing you want to try to aim for in this build is 100 recovery per always in PvP, and then discipline. Discipline is gonna be the #1 best thing, and then where the rest of your stats kind of land is kind of just gonna be up in the air overall. But I would say recovery, discipline, two biggest things you want to focus on stat wise in this build, and then wherever else you can invest in, intellect would be a close third, I guess I would say, with resilience and then strength. Remember, strength, our melee in this build, probably the worst part of the overall build, so I wouldn't worry too much about strength at all. Jumping into our mods, on my helmet mod, I have arc targeting and kinetic targeting. Honestly, I could probably go double kinetic here just for my hand cannon and my shotgun. So just depending what you're using, you're going to want to apply the appropriate targeting mod to assist with that, because these will improve target acquisition, accuracy, and aim down sight speed, which is nice to make sure your weapons feel a tad bit snappier when ADSing versus feeling like they're very slow aiming in and then also lose a fight because you just weren't as accurate at the start. Next, I am back to Apathettic aspects. I was running transversive steps for a moment, but with the removal of quick charge and all that, I am back on Apathettic aspect just because handling is just terrible feeling now without those mods. So I think having Apathettic aspect is going to really help overcome that. I think this exotic was already super meta, now it's even more meta. Next, you can see on there I have, again, anything to support the recharge rate of our grenade. So I have double grenade kickstart, so when you grenade energy is fully expended, you gain grenade energy, so it just creates a nice loop. And I double these up because they do stack. I didn't do 3 just because it's going to kind of be diminishing returns as it states right here, but again, this just helps give you a nice bump to your grenade energy just at the rip. And then next I have fastball, so this increases grenade throw distance, and as I mentioned, the threadling grenade is kind of floaty, so I like using fastball. Allows me to throw that a little bit farther without having to like swing my reticle super high in the air. It just makes grenade throwing feel a little bit more accurate and natural when playing the game. For my chest, I'm running double unflinching kinetic aim. Again, this is just to help make sure that when my hand cannon or my rose that I'm using stays on as on target as possible. I've actually noticed when using these, it feels quite good. I feel like I take a lot better flinch, or less flinch I should say, in PvP. So I've been really enjoying running 2 of these, because before it was like 5 per double hand cannon, so basically you couldn't use it unless you're running no mod on your chest. So now that it's 3, definitely a no-brainer here. Getting into our boots, then we have Kinetic Weapon Surge. So when you pick up an Orb of Power, it's give you a slight buff to your damage in PvP. It does work in PvP, so it gives you a little extra damage, and this is nice. Just give your hand cannon or whatever your connective choice is a little extra forgiveness. So I do really like that, and I'm using Arc Holster. This allows me to make sure that my Matador is always reloaded, because I'm notorious for just not reloading my shotgun when I'm not using a holster mod. So I just do this kind of overcome my own shortcomings when it comes to remembering to reload my shotgun. And then here I have Innervation, reduces grenade cooldown each time you pick up an Orb of Power. So I just threw this in there again just as an extra help if I pick up Orbs of Power from wells or any supers that get popped and get kills, just to help with that grenade cooldown a little bit more. And then for our class ability, I'm running Double Bomber, reduce the grenade cooldown while using your class ability. So I got both of these here, which is super nice. And then Utility Kickstart, when your class ability energy is fully expended, you gain class ability energy. So it's giving us a nice boost to our class ability energy, and then also then pairing that with Bomber. So that way, anytime I pop my Rift, which is gonna be a lot, because like I said, we're on Warlock, this is gonna give you a ton of grenade energy back, which is gonna be nice. So again, it creates a nice loop. It pairs well with Grenade Crit Kickstart. And so this loop right here is gonna allow us to get those threadlings as much as possible. So that way when we consume them, we're gonna get a nice little boost from Grenade Kickstart. And then when we pop our Rift, we're gonna get another boost to our grenade. So it just kind of creates a nice loop. And then as we mentioned from one of our fragments, that as we do that, we will also, or do damage, we will also be getting grenade energy. So everything kind of funneling into our discipline stat. And as you can see here, I landed at tier 8, which lands us at a minute 38 cooldown, which is in reality will be much lower thanks to threat generation and the mods I mentioned. And for our weapons, you can really use whatever you want here. I got lots of different things I'm trying out right now, but I'm still staying tried and true for my Rose, Matador, and I've been using Deterministic Chaos as my heavy, just having fun with the new heavy weapon, which is pretty nice, very good, sounds very good as well. And so this is my Rose roll, just because people tend to always ask. But overall, these are the weapons and loadouts I've been using with Strand and Brewweaver in PvP. Definitely really enjoying it. Now, this is just like an overall, I would say, defensive build. You definitely play more defensively. You playing off your threadlings and just kind of letting the enemy come to you. You can play more aggressively in moments, but definitely this Broodweaver build definitely strikes me as being a lot more defensive and priming enemies with your threadlings to kind of finish off the kill. And then occasionally your threadlings will get kills here and there. It's not super crazy amount or anything like that, but overall I would say this build, a lot of fun, very defensive. Definitely not going to be the most aggressive build. I do have another build I'm playing around with that's going to be more on the aggressive side, so stay tuned for that if it works out. But let me know what you guys are thinking of Strand now that we have all the fragments unlocked. I'm really curious to see what subclasses you're enjoying. Are you enjoying Warlock? Do you think it's underpowered? I haven't had a chance to touch the other light subclasses, but as I do, I will kind of revisit my builds for all of these, so stay tuned for that as well.